Anyway, so hey, why don't we just get this going? Looks like a few more people are joining us, but I'm going to jump right in with Joe McGurl. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good. How are you, Rose?
Great. So you're going to
That's
make
good.
everyone on the call jealous by telling us that you are calling in from Florida.
Yes. Yeah, we spent some time in Florida in the spring and the fall. But I also want to say hi to Amy and Sophie. Hi, Amy and Sophie. It's great to be on this with you, and I love your work. It was really great to see what you submitted this year. I love your connection, too, between the sculpture and the paintings, but there's also somewhat of a connection, it appears. So it's beautiful work.
Yeah, you know what? And seriously, Joe, I think like the connection I really want to talk about is this connection to horse and self and, the personal connection. And with you, I really want to talk about this science and sort of metaphysical connection that you have with your work. And so let me tell people who may be unfamiliar with Joe McGurl. First of all, in case you can't tell, Joe is from Massachusetts. So I'm guessing he's not a Broncos fan, though we haven't really talked about it. No, don't hold it against him. The Patriots stink this year, so we're okay with that. Although the Broncos stink worse, but but Joe is an avid sailor. And that's kind of a theme that comes out in his work. He's also a really amazing teacher of what he does. And he's designed, well, you're going to have to talk about it, but it's this contraption that allows artists to work from life, which is what you do. You don't work from photos, right?
I'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah.
Okay, good. So Joe's a real purist, and he came into this he came into art kind of by way of his dad, who was a sign painter, but let's circle back to that at the end. I want you to talk about this, no photos, your process, and why the heck are you in Florida and not suffering in Massachusetts? Go for it, Joe.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't use photos, Mark. However, with my Western scenes, I use a little bit of photography for the horses. And I look at those a little bit as a combination between sort of my art and illustration. When I was a kid, I just loved N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle and all the great illustrators. And originally I was going to be an illustrator, but then I realized that illustration might not be the thing that would give me as much freedom as I wanted. So I ended up being a painter. So the whole idea of not using photography with me is that I want to experience the world as I've experienced it with just my eyes, my mind, and then out through my fingers and my hands. And so it's a very direct and sort of straight connection that I have with the subject that I'm painting. And if I were to use photography, that would come in between myself and the subject, and I would be painting how a camera sees the world rather than as a human does. For instance, if you have a bat and he's flying around, he's experiencing the world in a very different way than humans do because bats are blind. And a camera experiences the world in a very different way than a human does. So I don't want to bring that into my art making. I really am trying to keep the connection really clean and pure between myself and the subject matter. Most of my paintings are made up, are comprised of sketches done on location. A lot of them are completely imaginary, but I've been doing a lot for 40 years, basically, been painting outdoors, plein air painting, landscapes and seascapes and shoreline scenes. And so that's given me a storehouse of knowledge that I can draw on to create these imaginary paintings. For instance, the thunderstorm painting. I wasn't sitting there seeing the thunderstorm. I did have a sketch of the topography. But I added the clouds and then put the thunderbolt coming down. And the same with the painting that's behind me called Timeless. That's imaginary also. But I painted thunderheads enough to know how to make a thunderhead look like a thunderhead, and those cliffs that we see out in the Southwest. often enough to paint them so they look like the cliffs in the Southwest with their erosion and where the water has worn away the ridges along the cliffs and such. So
So Joe,
you know,
can I?
yes,
So let me ask you. Let me ask you something. When with these landscapes that are very Western, are rugged terrain. I know you make a lot of trips out west, but you were saying that some of this comes from your imagination. So can you kind of talk about like Thunderbolt, for example? Would you talk about kind of putting that whole scene together?
yeah. So I had a little sketch, and it had the foreground. It was painted near Lake Mead a couple of years ago. I was out there for a week painting, and so I had the topography, but there wasn't much going on in the sky. And then I just thought, maybe I could make like a cattle drive, and how could I make it more interesting? So I thought, well, I could make it, a thunderstorm approaching, and that he's got to get his cattle someplace out of the open. Well, the storm comes, and the cattle are maybe starting to run because there's a thunderbolt, and so it just creates a little bit of a drama, a little bit of a narrative. And the thing I love about the West, it has the same sense of space and freedom that the ocean does. When I'm in on the ocean, I just feel like I could go off and sail anywhere I want around the world, to the end of the world, just go off to the horizon, sail away. And with the West, it's the same way. I could take a horse. Well, I don't have a horse, but my wife does. So I could take my wife's horse and just ride off into the sunset. This wonderful sense of freedom. And there's also a little bit of sense of loneliness in the two places too, because they're open, and there's not other people around and signs of human habitation and such. It's just big open spaces, kind of a little melancholy loneliness that I really am attracted to in the West, that is similar to what I found on the ocean. So, I think that's the sort of connection between the two.
I really like that. I like that connection because I think for a lot of Easterners, like I've heard people who are born and raised in the East say that the West is kind of unsettling because it's too open, and so that's interesting, the connection between being out on the water and being in the West.
Yes, and I think there's a difference between being in the country in the East, where it's largely wooded and overgrown, and being in the coast in the East, where it's the open ocean. I couldn't live in the woods. I get claustrophobic. I have to see the sky. I have to see what kind of weather is coming. I love weather. And that's what's great about the West, too. You can see a thunderstorm coming from miles away, and it might take all morning to get here. And the same on the ocean. So I feel like you're really immersed in the weather when you're in the West and when you're on the sea.
Hey, I'm going to screen share, but I'm wondering if you would talk about light in your painting, and I'm going to screen share Thunderbolt. But in your artist statement, and we've talked about this, you really study light and also physics and then metaphysics. And would you talk a little? I know this is a huge topic.
Yeah, I could talk for weeks, but yeah.
I know, right? I'm gonna pull up a screen share, but would you just talk about that a little bit? Yeah. So okay.
Well, I think my interest in light came from two sources. One was when I was a kid. I used to go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston for art classes every Saturday. And I'd walk through these wonderful landscapes. I didn't really know who did them or any of the story behind them, but I just loved the light that they had them. They looked so real. And when I was young, I was really attracted to things that looked real. And I studied them for hours trying to figure out how these artists made these paintings look so lifelike. And it really intrigued me. And then I grew up in Quincy, which isn't too far from Concord, and that was where Thoreau and Emerson and the transcendentalist philosophers were centered around that area. And they had this philosophy that there was a spirituality that could be discerned through nature, and particularly through light. And so the idea of the philosophical implications of light and it manifested in canvas sort of came together, because I've been familiar with the transcendentalists, having grown up near where they were centered. And I also was exposed to the luminous painters who were influenced by the transcendentalists. The luminous painters painted in the 1850s or so, that era, and they were influenced by the transcendentalists. And a lot of their paintings had a really strong focus on light. Their light was very crisp and clear and clean, and they believed that the light was sort of a portal to the divine, or to the world beyond. So those two things eventually sort of coalesced into my art. And my paintings aren't really luminous paintings. The luminous painters were very smoothly painted. You couldn't see any brush strokes. There was a much more stillness to their paintings. And my paintings have a lot of texture and, the composition, the light is different, but there's still a focus on the light and the quality of light. And that's really the thing that makes my paintings is the light, because if the light were different, it would be a completely different subject. You could turn this thunderbolt painting into a sunset or a midday painting with bright sunlight, and it would say something completely different. And it would be a different subject and different painting. It would be about different things. So the light really determines the subject of my paintings rather than the topography or the anecdotal elements that I put in, such as the cattle drive. It's not really a painting about cattle drive, it's a painting about light.
So, okay. This is one of the things that is just really bumming me out about not having the show in person. And I tell this to people all the time, but like opening the crates when the work comes in and unwrapping art is my Christmas. It's like, it's just such a joy, and I'm missing that this year. And I kind of don't exactly know what to do with myself right at the moment. So I'm glad we're on these Zoom talks because this is helping a lot. But I don't know if you can see it. So I just brought up the painting, The Black Hat. So speaking of light, this one, the light is super important in this painting. So tell us about this.
Well, this was kind of a fun one. It's actually taken a little bit of a journey. It started off with just the figure in the foreground, silhouetted. And then I thought, he's just sort of there and kind of lonely. What if I had someone else across the field and the other side of the fence sort of looking back at him? And I put the figure on a horse. So there's obviously two people on horses looking at each other. And I titled it The Black Hat. And you say, well, the black hat, that guy has a white hat on. So the person who's looking at him, which is actually you, the viewer, because you're standing where he would be and you're making that shadow. So you, the viewer, are wearing the black hat. And so it was kind of fun playing this little game with trying to include the viewer into the painting. And like, maybe you should wear a hat when you view this painting and sit on a horse, and then it really would complete the story.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it was kind of a fun little game that sort of developed as I went. And then it's, are they antagonists or are they friends? Is he going to wave and say, howdy, partner? Or is he going to say, what are you doing on my land? So the viewer can make up their own story there too.
Right, because they're on other sides of the fence line, right?
Yeah.
You lucky duck. Okay, so Mountaintops, Colorado. So yeah, another painting, and this one really is more of a luminous painting. I mean, wow. Wow.
Yeah, this started off as a plein air sketch, and it was originally 9x12, but I didn't like the bottom half of it, so I cut the bottom half off and like the top half much better. I really like the top half. So sometimes I'll do that. I'll crop a painting if some part of it isn't working. And this was done out near Ouray, Colorado. And it sat in my studio for a couple of years. And then I said, I really like the mountaintops. So I made the painting about the mountaintops. And I reworked it in the studio, applied some thicker paint, a little bit more texture on the paint surface. But it's basically the same as it was because I brought it in from the field.
Really? So would you talk about that? You built this little contraption that goes on the side of your pochade box or your French easel.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I call it a site-size viewfinder. And what it is, it's basically a metal frame that I strap on to or attach next to my panel when I'm outside painting. it's like a picture frame with a grid on it. And I look through that and I compose my painting by looking through the frame. And I just move the view from where the frame is next to the panel onto my panel and draw it out that way. It's called site size because in the 19th century, if you were an artist going to school to learn to be an artist, you would learn what they call site size method of figure painting. And they would place the figure next to the canvas. And you would look at them side by side and make comparisons with one right next to the other. Then you would walk up to the canvas and draw there, but then walk back maybe 10 feet to look at them side by side and compare them. They call that site size method. Sargent and all the great masters of the 19th century in particular all learned to paint that way and draw that way. And I spent 2 years drawing figures with charcoal using the site size method in Boston. I learned it from them, these artists in Boston who learned it from Paxton and Jerome and the 19th century painters. It was passed down through the generations. So then I thought, how can I incorporate site size figure painting into landscape painting? And you can't, because I can't put my canvas next to a mountain that's 10 miles away or next to a cloud or a tree that's 300 yards away. But I could make a square and look through that square, and everything I see in that square I could transfer onto my panel and paint that way. And so that's what I do. And for me, it really helps me paint much more quickly, because when you're painting outside and you do a significant amount of painting outdoors, the light is changing continually. You know, the sun is moving constantly across the sky. Weather changes, the color of light changes with the angle of the sun, and it also changes the light on your canvas itself. So you have to paint quickly when you're painting outside, or otherwise you're painting something that doesn't exist anymore. So the viewfinder helps me paint much, much more quickly. And for some artists, it helps them paint more accurately. And you can use it as sort of, I always say, it's a point of reference or a point of departure. You can look through the viewfinder and say, okay, this is what the scene looks like, but now I want to change it. So you don't have to copy exactly what you see in the viewfinder, but it makes a nice point of reference. And you can say, well, I'm going to move this tree over this side a little bit. It's going to look better. I'm going to change the shape of this mountain and such. But then you know what you're moving from, too. So I look through and say, I know that's what the tree looks like, and that's where it is, but I'm going to move it over to the left a little bit. So it just helps things move along much more quickly for me and more accurately, too.
Yeah, yeah. And then and it sounds like it also gives you the freedom to make the composition that you most want.
Right, and I can change the composition. And I've been using for my workshops. I eventually ended up manufacturing them because I made one myself. And then when I do workshops, I said, well, it's not fair to me not show them like what I actually do. So I brought them to the workshops, and they all wanted one. So I ended up manufacturing that I sell on my website. And they're made out of powder-coated steel. And yeah, they've been going really well. Sold a ton of them. So it's kind of a fun little project.
Oh,
it just sort of grew out of, I don't know where.
So you have your artist and engineering side of your brain going at all times.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, tell us about Amber Waves of Grain, and then I'm going to pop off the screen share. But I have this one up on the screen right now. Yeah.
This was partly made up and partly based on a plein air painting that I had done. And I was really intrigued with the color of the yellow against the blue sky and just getting this really golden glow to the landscape. And so I incorporated part of a sketch I had done out in Wyoming with my imagination. And so there's really three different ways I work. One is like, I'll make a plein air painting and I really like it. I think this would make a nice big painting. So I'll make it larger, not change a whole lot about it. Other ones that might be half and half, I'll base it on a plein air painting, but I'll make some significant changes. And then others are completely imaginary. And so it really depends on each situation, which painting, what I want to do, which way I work. And that was a combination of the two, using the plein air sketch and my imagination. I changed things around. The tree is somewhat similar to how it was, but the original one, there was a barn, and it was a little different scenario. And I just wanted to create, there again, this sense of vast space, just endless space. You could, ride off and cross the plain and up over the mountains and just keep going.
Hey, so is the painting starting over with you, or is that one? Is that
Yes.
you?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Okay. So tell us about starting over, and then I'm gonna grab Amy Laugesen and bring her in.
Okay. This was developed from a sketch when Planar Painters of America, which is a group that I'm in, and Rose was our fearless leader for a few years. We went to Steamboat Springs, and I was just driving around one day and came across these really cool buildings. And the background is invented, but the buildings were actually there. And I was really intrigued with the bright light shining off of the metal roofs. So that's what sort of was the hook in this painting. And then the landscape was typical of the area that we are in, but it wasn't behind these buildings. It was probably about 10 miles away, actually. And so I combined the two into one scene. And I do that often too. There'll be two aspects of a location, and sometimes the fiction is a little bit more accurate than truth. So I'll combine two sections of a landscape into one that really has the essence of that one spot, a little bit more even than the two individual sketches would. And then I thought I'd put a cowboy in there, like I had these buildings, and what are the buildings doing? They're just sort of sitting there empty. And I thought, well, maybe he's starting over and he's coming in, and there's a little American flag in the building. So, that could be something. If you're into politics, it could be some meaning for you there. It could just be just a relic from the previous owner. And so he's coming in to start a new life. And it's going to be optimistic. The clouds are clearing. It's going to be sunny. So it'll be a good story in the end.
Well, you answered my big question. Why is it called Starting Over? That's awesome. Yeah. I love it.
You can make up your own story why it's starting over. Maybe he had it's like I had a painting called Four Strong Winds. And it was kind of, I had the idea of that Ian Tyson song in mind. There was a cowboy riding off, and it was like, well, is he riding off to like something sad because his girlfriend has broken up with him? But I had sky clearing, indicating there were good things. So it's kind of like starting over too. Maybe he had a bad romance or a bad business thing, or who knows? You make up your own story.
Oh my God.
That's what I like about the West. I like putting these little narratives in it, which I don't do in my Eastern paintings. My Eastern paintings are more pure landscapes and such. But these all have a little narrative content, which is kind of really fun for me. Because as I said, I really love the illustrators from the past.
Wow. Yeah. Well, they were very prominent in a lot of aspects of the West. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, don't go anywhere, Joe. Do not put your bathing suit on and leave.
Oh, the tie's in and it's sunny.
Oh my God. We're going to head over to Amy Laugesen. Cedar says, by the way, I love how the shadow of the figure on the horse sets up such a drama against the man holding the rifle. Classic Western drama. Yeah. And Ginny Gulikowski, Amber Wave, simply wow. Love the detail and the light. Yeah, for sure. And that's why we want to see it in person. So you'll just have to trust. You'll have to be trusting. Hi, Amy Laugesen.
Hi, Rose. Hi, Joe. Hi, Sophy.
Hi, Amy.
Quick shout out to Krista Henley. Happy birthday if you're there behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
That was a Krista's birthday.
Krista's birthday. And hi, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for joining us. This is fun. Okay.
Okay, so Amy is calling in from her new place in Crestone, Colorado. She and her wonderful photographer partner, Stephen, have just busted out of the city and moved down to Crestone. They're spreading out and loving it. So this is an inside look at the new place, which has water now, but no heat.
Well, we just had the wood burning stove installed yesterday. It is a little chilly. We're priming it right now because it's pretty stinky with the paint burning off, so we don't have it going. So yeah, it's pretty raw. This is the ultimate ultimate sculpture designed and being built by Stephen. So, and he's behind the scenes here. So helping me with some camera work. So, yeah. And we're just north.
But
we're
this
just
is
north.
this is like the best way to do these talks when you. No, I was just going to say this is the best way to do these talks when you have a professional behind the camera.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And he does, and I'm so grateful too, because he does beautiful photographs of my pieces so that they show really nicely online. So, yay.
Yeah, you're super lucky for that. Hey, so Amy, let's dive in. So
Okay.
I met Amy through an organization that's now defunct, I think. Yeah, a nonprofit, and you were out sculpting wild horses in Colorado and creating these just fabulous visions of horse, like and kind of looking way back in history, way back in time, and giving a real nod to some of the earliest artists out there whose work still survives in museums and on through art history. So I just have I have a million questions for you, but would you talk about why clay? Why do you work in clay?
For me, and I'm trained as a mixed media sculptor. So I love different mediums and trained in Massachusetts, right near the MFA. So Joe, we've got connection. Clay, there is, as one of my languages, as one of my vocabularies, I love the earth nature of that medium. I think that's it. There's a life in that clay body that I resonate with.
Yeah. Wow. So can you talk about, like, your work, it just continues to evolve. And I'm wondering, let's just jump into some of these pieces. And I have to tell you, I'm super curious about security blankets that is just right next to you there. Because you usually don't really smooth out and finish and glaze a piece to this extent. Would you talk about this one?
So this one, I think that this has layers, I think, connecting to monuments. I think finishing, I think definitely this year, 2020, there was a need to have a horse really grounded. So this one is very legged, very grounded to the base, smooth, and I think something really physical to hold on to. And I think in some of the smoothing and then the layers of blanket, both the horse and working in clay and sculpting bring me comfort and have gotten me through crazy times in my life. And so I think this piece, security blankets, really the horse and then the blankets bringing comfort in this time of year, or this throughout 2020, right?
Yeah. So tell me about the glazes. I'm just curious.
So this glaze is saturation gold. And so it's got this beautiful bronze quality to it. And I use my glazes. I wouldn't call myself a traditional ceramic artist. I approach my ceramic works as a sculptor would, and finish my glazes to be more like patinas on a bronze, and wanting them to look aged or weathered. And so my choice of glazes, I have that effect. So this one definitely a weathered bronze, warm bronze, and then the different glazes on the blankets to complement that. And I can turn it around. Can you see? Is it something that Stephen should come in closer on? You think?
I don't know if he can zoom in a little bit closer. That'd be great. If not, I mean, everything's up on the website.
Okay.
Oh, here he comes. Thank you. Oh, look at that. Oh, I love how the light catches it.
Okay.
Wow.
And on a steel base. So it's ceramic on a steel base. So I love the integration of different mediums in my work as well.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And then, hey, let's go to the other one right next to you.
This one? This one or to this side?
Yeah, let's do that one. Let's do the red
Okay.
one. And sorry, I'm not grabbing my list fast enough to get the, balance between A and C.
And C. So for those who know dressage or dressage writers, this is inspired by the dressage horse and the arena. So the letters around the base of this, and you usually enter at A, and then you come in and you salute the judge, and then you go through your test in the dressage. So from A and then C.
Oh, I love it.
But then I think a play on sort of that balance and sort of more of a personal connection with horses and self, and as self-portrait, more or less.
Okay.
I think there's that element in that piece.
Touch on your personal connection with horses. You had a horse that really kind of saved your life when you were a kid.
Yes, saved my life. Yep.
Yeah.
So growing up with learning challenges, dyslexic, I gravitated to art and horses. And I had, during a really turbulent, challenging time in my life, in my early adolescence, I connected with a horse, and he was a rescue horse, and he is forever my muse. He was one of my best teachers, also gave me a sense of purpose. And so I think these horses are constantly, he's not here, he passed away several years ago. But he continues to come through in my work, that connection.
Wow.
And I think this piece in front, I might go down, have Stephen point this, so ancient recognition.
Let's look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Truly sort of connects to that deep human-horse relationship that is so ancient. And I think, so there's that ancient connection. I'm inspired by ancient artifacts, and some of our earliest artworks, both in cave and sculptural form in different mediums, the horse has been present there. And so I bring that, and then also my personal relationship with horses into these pieces. And there's a beautiful John O'Donoghue and Anamkara, a book of Celtic wisdom, speaks of, I love this writing, about love as ancient recognition. And so this piece, the title of this piece was inspired by that writing.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. So we have got a couple others I have a question for you though.
Okay.
Cedar. Amy, how
Yes.
much are you influenced by Qin Shi Huangdi's tomb in Xi'an, China, of terracotta soldiers and horses?
Big time inspiration, and that tradition of ceramics, and that ancient also connection with ceramic. So yes, big inspiration, Cedar. Thank you. Yes.
Have you been there?
I have not. So on my bucket list. And
Let's go.
yes. Okay. Let's go.
Tell us about Denver Artifact and
Okay.
A Horse is a Horse, of course.
Okay, so we'll start with Denver Artifact right here. And being a Denver native, this piece, a little different style for me. this piece actually there is a ceramic shelf base on this piece. There's metal parts in the legs. It's a lower fired ceramic. And then I did some cold finishing on the surface, so to look like graffiti and mark making. That's one thing that I love. Whenever all these forms, there's a certain drawing that in developing the form that I integrate into the sculpture. Sometimes you don't see it under the glaze or the finishes, but they're there. And this one I think is really exposed, seeing a lot of those different mark making in the piece. And I can turn it on. Can you see that? Wow. Is that coming through okay? Yeah. So there's a little horse on the side, horse 3030, a little 5280, being a Denver native, growing up, going to the National Western Star Show, and yeah.
Beautiful. And then let's take a look at a horse as a horse, of course.
Okay. So, and that's over here, right here. And so this, and thanks to an artist friend, dear friend of mine, Joan Walker, who helped inspire this piece with definitions of horse from the Oxford English Dictionary. So she has all the volumes. And so these are decals. Ceramic decals. So you're able to run the special paper through a printer, and it's the iron oxide in the ink. You're able to then fire it onto a sculpture so it's permanent. So these are all definitions covering this horse form, defining horse, and words that integrate horse all over its body.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh.
Can you see it? Can you see all, is it coming through okay?
Yeah, it is. It is. On my screen it is. And that really helps because I think on the website, it's hard to tell exactly what it is, but seeing it like this is really wonderful. Oh, that's great. Oh, Amy, thank you so much. So, okay, don't go anywhere. Okay. I'm going to head over to Sophy, and Sophy, you just need to unmute. And hello, Sophy. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Hello, everybody.
I'm doing great. So Sophie spent about a month back home in London, and is home now. Well, second home in Longmont. Glad you're back. Hanging out in the COVID studio, I guess, away from everybody, and just.
Yes, I thankfully don't share my studio with anybody, so I can. It is my isolation.
Yeah. So people who are really familiar with the show know you were our featured artist last show. And we have this amazing piece that I wanted the second I saw it. It's the biggest piece of art we've been able to buy for the collection yet, and it's just stunning. But the thing that people, if you haven't been to the show and haven't heard Sophie talk or heard me talk about Sophie's work, you may not know just how truly personal this work is. In fact, Sophie calls these self-portraits. And so we're going to kind of take it from there, Sophie. And the thing that's been happening with Sophie's work over the last 3, 4, 5 years is that she has, maybe the best way to say it, correct me if I'm wrong, she's allowed herself to be free, experiment, throw paint at these canvases. She is not afraid to completely destroy the work. It is all about this expression. It is often pure emotion and reaction to what she's working on. And the horse is the vehicle in a way. Sophy is a horsewoman. She has horses, has off and on had horses, but also grew up in the theater with her father, who ran theaters and arenas in London. So has that real deep sense of history and theater and drama, so a lot of it comes together in this work. It is the horse, which is very much a part of the West, but Sophy takes it to a very deep level in reflecting on her own life. And so, Sophy, I hope I got that right. And I'm wondering, could we just dive into some of the work and tell us about what you've got going on this year?
Well, I think very often you don't know what you're going to get when you start things out. And as you say, I've been experimenting with a lot of different mediums, subjects, tools, and I recently have had a lot of subject matter that has pushed its way into the studio and pushed its way into my painting. Horses have always been to me very expressive of all kinds of human sensation and emotions and just different aspects of life. They've always been very relatable to me. So, but recently, I have found that the work has really opened up a great deal. There's been a lot of variety. And the best part of that in the studio is that it sort of can make unseen connections. And I've been very willing to go with various different things and very open to go with, along different lines of experimentation and making different connections. Like this painting here.
Let's talk about
it's called Coverage. And okay, I started this in early spring, and I had been looking at various kinds of protective gear. I've been making a lot of pieces around gloves and around vapor masks and hard hats and welding goggles and things like that. And the idea of protection and insurance against various things, calamities, was something that had been on my mind. Also, the idea of, that you could try and protect yourself from what the world has to throw at you. But really, there's no assurance against any of it, really.
Right. Well, give it a try. Good luck. Yeah.
You could try. Yeah. And it was funny because it really, it was not a painting that was to do necessarily with the decisions I made in it. It was more a painting that was to do with the past paths that I didn't take. I started it, and then the pandemic and, everybody was scrambling for masks and gloves, and it became a very unstable summer. And I'd come in and I'd think, well, which way am I going to take this painting? And I had a problem with that because it kept changing for me. What I saw in this beginning that I had made was different from day to day, and it sometimes I felt like I was the horse that was partially blindfolded and just could peek out of the corner of one eye at a world that was unknown and full of unknown dangers. Sometimes I felt I saw it from the point of view of the person who has padded this horse and blindfolded this horse and sort of tried to insure against whatever injury. Or and sometimes it felt like I'd come into the studio and it just felt like, give me sort of sensory deprivation from this world. But it was never the same. So it never really, it sort of kept opening up without going anywhere as a thing to look at. And in the end, I did very little to it. Which was a bit of a job for me. I mean, it's not exactly, it's sort of a start of a painting, but the fact that it was unfinished and the fact that you can see the ground for different bits of it, and that you can see the drawing underneath, and it's not, the fact that it's not finished has, in inverted commas, has, adds to it, I think. But it was a jump.
So I have coverage up, something that is just draws my attention right away is this tear in the blanket and how the blindfold is slipping down off the horse's eyes. Would you talk about that a little bit?
The bomber for this horse that would have another layer of padded protection on top of this. And it's thick felt that's wrapped around in the front. And then there's another whole padded layer that goes on top. So he's sort of half dressed. And I like the way, I like the way that his eye is actually closed. But if he opened it, he could see something that is going on. And I didn't, I did decide not to put an actual place to it. I didn't want to impose an actual place on it because, as a blindfolded horse, you don't have an actual place. The place is not there. So
yeah. Hey, tell us about this painting. I'm going to bring this up here, looking out, and some of these smaller paintings. Oh, I love the brushwork. So looking out, this horse is walking away from us.
He was a horse I saw at the National Western Stock Show, actually. He's a Percheron, and he was standing in the aisle. And they are so massive, these horses, and so solid. And I just like the way I have a few of these draft horses in the studio, some huge, but I just like the way that he is very slightly off balance, and the whole, you know, the just mass of him, and I don't know, they're beautiful. They're like they're very. They're like sentinels to me, the big horses.
I think they're kind of show-offs too. I think they're show-offs.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that's a Frisian horse there called, and he was doing his stuff. He very he was a. This is an oil painting. Don't often do oil paintings because mixing oil and acrylic with the same set of brushes and is not a good thing, and having oil, you know, place where I have a lot of paper, and I don't usually do oil paintings.
wow.
But then I started looking at all kinds of material, and I've been doing some etching and some block printing, which is oily, so, you know.
Okay.
I've given up on trying to keep that separate.
Well, and spray painting.
And spray painting.
Yeah.
I do love spray paint. It has the ability to obliterate very, you know, swiftly. And what, in the end, I went to something that I wanted to sort of get to have it as if you were looking through a filter, or the viewer, and I took away a lot of the place, and took away a lot of the painting with this ochre bronze color, and it was like fibers to me. It was like looking through a scrim, and there was something sort of fairly, I don't know, spray paint. I do like spray paint. The vandal in me.
The vandal in you.
The vandal, yes.
I love it. I love it.
And then you move you know, it's a very physical thing to do because you do it quickly and you do it, I use spray cans. It's not, to me, it's not a very precise endeavor.
So blues, and then lockdown, of course, we have to talk about lockdown, but tell us about blues a little bit.
Blues, I do love black horses and blue horses. There's a whole thing about blue horses, you know, going back to Chagall and everybody. And it's just a mood. It really is just a mood. And again, this horse is, you know, he's has human influence. He's tied to something. And there's something about, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain what it is about the blue horses, but I do keep coming back to them.
Yeah. It's definitely, there's like this mystery. It's like night paintings, that there's so much going on in the dark that your eye just keeps trying to focus deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about lockdown. This is
lockdown. This really, the title is the last thing that comes. The painting very often for me. I mean, they're non-verbal for most of their, you know, while I'm making them. And a couple of these horses behind bars, and it was nothing actually to do with the whole COVID thing, although I think, you know, having been through self-isolation twice and, you know, quarantine, 2-week quarantine twice, I think it's, I don't know, just...
Oh, I think we lost. Did we lose Sophie? Ah,
Oh no,
are you there?
I am here. Hang on.
There you are.
Am I here?
You're here.
Okay.
Oh, technology. Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
Okay, so believe it or not, it is 2 minutes to 1 o'clock. These always go so quickly for me. In the final couple minutes, I love to toss out the question to everybody. And certainly you're all unmuted. Please, if you have questions or comments for each other, chime in. But I love to ask, how did you get to where you are right here today? The quick version, you know, Sophie from England, Joe's in Florida, Amy's in Crestone right now. Like, what art thing, spirit moved you to where you are? Go for it, Sophie.
Okay, a very boring job in London, which happened to be right next to the Tate, where I went for my lunch. And then I went to Goldsmiths in London, and I came over here to do my master's, and I think, you know, your painting, your work as an artist just evolves with your life, where you are, what you're surrounded by, and the sort of canon of your experience. And here I am.
Joe?
Well, I'm in Florida now. This is, we come down in the spring and in the fall just to get out of the New England spring and fall, which are kind of miserable. They're gray and rainy and drizzly and raw. I love the winter in New England. I love the summer, but it's just nice to get away for a few months either side of the season. And we live on Cape Cod. And before that, we lived in Rhode Island. We had a little farm. My wife is an avid horse woman. She rides dressage. And we had goats and cats and dog and all that. We lived there for 6 years, and then I wanted to live near the ocean though, so we moved to Cape Cod, live on the ocean, and my wife still rides. She boards a horse. And yeah, and I make my annual trip or two out west to get some inspiration, do some plein air painting.
Nice. And see your friends, yeah?
Yep, see my chums out there.
Yeah. Amy Laugesen.
So my journey, I want to say a little bit started, you know, amazing supportive parents. My dad had a wood shop, so putting things together, working with my hands, love of tools, really sort of helped in their support, encouraging my unique learning style.
Feel it, Brett.
So that really started in preschool. I think definitely, you know, in drawing and putting things together, and then I knew I wanted to go into the arts, and so there's been, boy, all sorts of facets in my life, both as an artist wanting to go graphic design, illustration, and then going to Boston, and having some family connection and artists in my life, and then leading me to different careers in the arts, and eventually time to focus on my own work and doing the residency in Hayden, Colorado, where we first met with Colorado Art Ranch. All these little facets have come together and are an important part of my life and my work. And I've been working at the Durst studio Peter Durst's studio, ceramic artist, as a mentor. And so because I'm a little nomadic right now, with not having been in this house in Crestone, so making the move from Denver and then to Crestone, and eventually we will have a studio here, both my husband and I, and yeah, we'll see where the amazing landscape will definitely inspire future works.
Oh, perfect. I want to thank you all, and thank you everyone who jumped on to listen in. This call is being recorded, so it will be up on our website in a couple days. Our wonderful editor goes back in and he puts some images in for us, so it makes it a little at times. So that'll be up online if anyone missed it, or if you know anyone and want to pass the link. The show everything is up on the CoorsWesternArt.com website. So I really encourage you to go there, take a look at everything. We can also direct you from that site to Handbid. We're using Handbid this year, as I know a lot of you have heard me say a million times already. But everything is essentially going to be sold via a silent auction. It was the fairest way we could figure out how to do a virtual event. So sales will culminate to a close for the silent auction on January 5th. That evening, we have a fun video presentation in line for you, and we are going to announce some awards like Best of Show and Artist Choice and good stuff like that. So that is coming up on January 5th. So please go to the website and register on handbid.com for our show, and you can tag work you really like and just get bidding. And if you have any questions or comments, please reach us through the website as well and pass the link along to all your friends. And next week we have some more great talks. I think we've got 6 talks left. But we will continue the talks. Believe me, I'm having too much fun to quit. So Joe McGurl, thank you. Amy Laugesen, thank you. Thank you. Sophie Brown. Oh my gosh, you all mean the world to me. I so love you. I love your work. Thank you.
Thank
Joe,
you.
don't get a sunburn.
You do look very healthy, Joe.
Yeah.
Healthy, and tanned.
Yeah.
Jealous.
I want to hang out some more. I want more time to talk.
I know, it'd be great to talk to you ladies and talk about your work too. I wish that's one of the great things about the live shows is we get to meet other artists, and I have so many friends that I've met from these shows. It's been wonderful that I never would have met otherwise.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I remember learning sight size, Joe. Sight size and lifting angles and taking measurements, and
Yeah.
I don't know that they teach that anymore.
And very few little ateliers they still do, which is fascinating.
I saw once at the Royal Academy, they have a life drawing room, and it's just this grid of plumb lines, and it's got and like spirit leveled lines that you stand behind, and you stand on your tape masked.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day.
Yeah. That's how we did it.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. I'm pulling the plug.
Oh, man.
Come on.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
No,
All
take
right.
care. Happy holidays.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.